Good morning, everyone. Was that a great talk or what? Now, Sean, I want to compliment you and thank you. I mean, that was an amazing talk, but to give up a year of your life, to give up a year from your young infant son and travel the United States and travel the world to talk about these important issues, you truly are an inspiration. Thank you very much. We're now going to shift to an issue that has been at the heart of so many policy and political discussions this year: testing. The implementation of new assessments to measure college and career-ready standards has been a simple process in some states and a very difficult process in others. And I think I see some heads nodding. One thing that most state education leaders probably have in common is the knowledge that the assessment issue is long from being over. Today, we are honored to be joined by a nationally acclaimed panel of practitioners who have been at the forefront of these conversations in their states. I'd like to welcome the panel to the stage. Hannah Scandera, the Secretary of Education in New Mexico. Mitchell Chester, the Commissioner of Education in Massachusetts. Michael Kirst, the Chair of the California State Board of Education. And Liz Willen, the education reporter for the Hechinger Report, will be our moderator. This is like introducing an all-star team. This is great. Good morning and looking forward to your talk.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm so happy to be discussing this issue because I'm the editor-in-chief of the Hechinger Report. We're a nonprofit, independent news organization. We're based at Teachers College, Columbia University, and we have spent the last 3 years combing the country writing about the Common Core. You'll see our stories, you'll hear them on NPR, they're in various newspapers. We've been in New Mexico, we've been in Massachusetts, we've been in California. We've been on everything from radio to magazines and news outlets, because this is a very, very important issue to the public. And in many years of writing and reporting about education, I have to say I've never seen an initiative that has caused so much confusion, concern, consternation, and misunderstanding despite the best of intentions. And because I'm here with no opinion on it, but just to report on this issue and tell folks what are happening, I'm really glad to be in front of an audience of politicians and legislators, because many of you may be able to help us in our mission, which is to inform the public about what's happening. And they need help. They really need help understanding this issue. On the plane here from New York, a mom seated next to me noticed I was reading about the Common Core, turned to me unsolicited and said, "I hate the Common Core. My kids are doing nothing but taking tests." And I asked her, what did she think about the actual standards? Had she ever read them? She said she had no idea what they were trying to accomplish and no idea what the standards were, but she was against them because they were about too much testing. What is the Common Core? It lays out what students should know in English and math, and was intended to transform American education. It was intended to help us catch up with a perception that other countries are doing much better than we are in terms of educating our populace. But as you know, even though they've been rolled out in more than 40 states, there has been a lot of confusion. It's not a curriculum. People think it's a curriculum. It doesn't mandate a set of textbooks or tests. A lot of times people think that. The Common Core doesn't provide lesson plans or scripts for teachers. It's a list of targets for what students should be able to do at the end of each grade. That hasn't meant it has been called everything from the Commie Core to many other names. So another reason I'm really happy to be at this session is because we have 3 educators here from 3 completely different, fascinating states. To give you a sense of just how different they are. Hannah Scandera, here in the middle, is the Education Secretary for New Mexico, where just 21% of the state's 4th graders were proficient in reading in 2013 on the NAEP tests. as opposed to 47% in high-performing Massachusetts, where Mitchell Kirst here is the Commissioner of Education. Michael Kirst, who's the president of the State Board of Education in California, works in a state with 6 million students, nearly 300,000 teachers, 1.6 million English language learners, and 1,000 school districts. So they're going to share some of the lessons they've learned in these extremely different landscapes and states. I would also like to say that before we get started, some of the confusion around the Common Core, I think, stems from not just the testing issue, but the strange bedfellows. The governor who just spoke here from Nevada is a fervent supporter of the Common Core. There are others who have decided it is a terrible idea and wanted to change the name of the Common Core. The National Education Association, the nation's largest teachers union, has been critical of the implementation of the standards. The Obama administration has supported the Common Core standards, the council, and so has the Jeb Bush, candidate for president on the Republican side. It's all over the place, and I think it makes it hard for politicians and for legislatures and for those who really care about education to figure out where to take a stand and what to take a stand on. So I'm going to introduce you to Hannah Skandera, because this has not been easy going in your state, and your state often vies with Mississippi for the bottom of the barrel, and I know you've been trying to do a lot to change that. It hasn't been easy. What have been some of the, what are you encountering as you try to implement the core in your state?
Thank you, Liz. I'll have to start first by saying, Governor Sandoval, I would love to meet the other states where it has been easy, because I'm not sure I've encountered in any of them yet. And I think for many reasons. And Liz, you touched on this. I'll just be very direct and to the point. Communication around Common Core, but I'm going to make the leap to park. We are a park state. Our assessment aligned to Common Core has been fundamentally the key issue. And in some places in New Mexico, we've done a great job with that, and in others, we really have a long way to go. But I would say if I had to articulate the number one issue, it's yes, implementation is hard when you're implementing something new. In New Mexico, for example, for our first year, we went from no testing online to 85% of our students testing online in a single year. And really the credit for that big leap, which is so significant, not just for this assessment, by the way, but as you think about connectivity across our state and what's happening as far as equal access and opportunity for students, I think we'll look back someday and say, wow, it wasn't just the assessment that went online. Our entire state began to provide another pathway of connectivity and accessibility. But the credit for that goes to our teachers and school leaders. And they really did this unbelievable effort in that transition and did it quite successfully for a first-year ramp-up. First, communication. The second thing I would highlight is partnerships. Nobody can do this on their own, meaning there's no entity, whether it's a legislature, a state public education department, a district, or a school. In isolation, I don't think we're successful in making and creating change, even when we can all agree that it's in the best interest of our kids, which not everybody has always agreed on this topic, that it's in the best interest of our kids. But as a general overarching principle, I think that's been key, is finding those partnerships. So I'll give a couple examples of key partnerships in our state that made this transition much more successful than I believe it would have been otherwise. First, in partnering with the legislature, and in fact, our representative Rosh is here at ECS today, and he really led the charge in thinking creatively about how do we make sure that we know that the assessments we're using are the right ones, they are the best, and that not just the right ones, but that when we get the results, we actually use them in an effective way. What we found in our state, we did a pilot with some of our districts and sat down and did, in essence, a testing on it. It was voluntary. It was a sit down with our districts saying, what's best practice? And at the end of that, we realized, and this is not a finger pointing any stretch, it was a wake-up call. We had districts, for example, testing their kindergarten through third graders 3 times on the same subject in the same grade. And so there was a lot of miscommunication around, is this federally required, state required, district required, or not required at all? And so that was a real eye-opener. We are now, as I mentioned, in partnership. The legislature, during our session this last year, said, let's not just do a pilot. Let's get really clear about what's happening in our districts so that we're partnering to make sure what we're using as an assessment matters, and that it's important not just, and I'll share this story because I think it captures so much. I'm a big sister in the Big Brother, Big Sister program. And my little sister's mom asked me to go to her teacher-parent conference this year. Sure, it was the best day in that teacher's life. So I took off the morning, and I went, and I was 30 minutes of listening. And my little sister is a rock star. Yes, I'm biased, but she's a rock star. 95s and 100s on everything. She's third in her entire school in the spelling bee, and she's not even in the top grade. She's awesome. We finished the parent-teacher conference, proud, excited, and I asked 2 questions. The first was, is she on grade level? The answer was no. So first question is, why do we test? We don't test to test. We test to do something about it for our teachers and our kids. The second question I asked was, why are we double testing in the same subject in the same grade? And this is not a disparaging comment about my little sister's teacher by any stretch. She said, I don't know. So right there, why do we do what we do? And getting clear about that and making sure that it's informing. By the way, my little sister's mom went straight to the principal and said, can I get some help? She would have never done that if she didn't know. The second piece is, let's make sure as we're walking down this road, and this is what the mission we're on with the legislature and then partnering with our districts to actually make this actionable, what are the assessments we're using? Do they matter? And let's make sure if they're not necessary, let's get clear about it. And so a second piece to that is getting really transparent about what is federally required, state required, district desired, et cetera, so that as we move forward and march forward, there's a really clear understanding, which circles back to that communication is so important as we go forward.
Yeah, I agree with you, and yet there are such differences in your states. In Massachusetts, for example, the standards movement there has been quite advanced, and the students have done so well, so much far above many others for years, that when the new standards were starting to be rolled out in Massachusetts, a lot of the opposition was that they weren't as deep and as good as the ones that you've already had come up with. I'm curious how you are straddling that communications divide in your state.
Right. Yeah, thanks, Liz. You did a great job, I think, in sort of framing some of the challenges in this arena, and I'll talk about Massachusetts specifically. That's a good opening. Take point of privilege of being up here to congratulate Bill Sanders, whose wife June is here and will receive the award, the James Bryan Conan Award later. And your comment about Massachusetts and the track record, because my predecessor, Dave Driscoll, is here, who led the effort to introduce standards and the assessment regime in Massachusetts that is part of, not the sole reason, but is a big part of why Massachusetts has been so successful. So to Jeremy, I'll say, I looked at the Frank Newman Awards, and I don't see Massachusetts ever having gotten one. So I'm going to call you to task on that one. I see Connecticut's getting, I see Kentucky's getting their second award today. So you are absolutely correct that standards have been in place in Massachusetts since the late 90s. The framework for the Massachusetts reforms was laid out in 1993 in an omnibus legislative act. The assessments have been in place since the late 90s. They include a graduation test, a 10th grade test, that students have to pass in 3 subjects: English language arts, mathematics, and we have a science, engineering, technology end of course or assessment in 10th grade. Students have to pass all 3 of those. And if you watch the trajectory of performance in Massachusetts over the last 15 years or so, it's been a very steady, continuous improvement. Whether you look at students' results on our own assessments or on the national assessment of education progress, where our 4th and 8th graders have been at the very top, and more recently on some international assessments. So the question that's being asked by some, not all, is it's not broke. Why are we changing it, right? And I suspect that many of you in your states have been visited by former Massachusetts officials who are telling you that the current commissioner is doing the wrong thing here. It's going to take Massachusetts backwards. But in fact, we were in the process of refining and upgrading our curriculum frameworks, our content standards, when I arrived in 2008, and that's a best practice. You revisit your standards, your expectations for student learning. Our knowledge improves about student learning progressions. We understand what works and what doesn't work. We've learned from implementing standards for the last decade. So we were in the process of upgrading those standards, and we were very deliberate about timing our upgrade to the rollout of the Common Core state standards, because we felt there's probably a lot we can learn from that, and there's probably a lot that we can contribute to that. And in fact, we worked very closely with that effort. We ended up incorporating the Common Core state standards in the current Massachusetts frameworks, which were adopted in 2010. We augmented the Common Core with some elements that are specific to Massachusetts, including author lists, including preschool standards that we wanted to incorporate and so forth. And we are absolutely convinced through having looked at those standards, been very deliberate about analyzing this upgrade, that we have in fact upgraded, not slipped backwards, not diluted the expectations for learning. And we're hearing that all the time from our educators who are implementing. They're 5 years into this now. And they're very excited about it for the most part. The testing piece, so upgrading our assessment to reflect the new standards, and we're part of the PARC project along with New Mexico and a number of other states. The assessment piece has become a huge lightning rod, more so than the Common Core standards in Massachusetts.
Well, I think that's actually what's happened in so many places, that there's a disconnect and a confusion between the testing and the standards. And a lot of the opposition is around the testing as opposed to the actual standards.
No, you're absolutely right. And the piece that I did not anticipate, because it's been interesting, we've been in a 2-year tryout of this new PARC assessment. We have not adopted it. We will make a decision in the fall. We've given our districts a choice of administering our legacy assessment or administering the PARC assessment. And just over half are administering the PARC. Just under half are administering our MCAS. And the feedback on the PARC is largely very positive. It's largely positive. What I anticipated that decision on transitioning and sunsetting our legacy test assessment would be a major decision for us, which is why we set out on the 2-year time frame. What I didn't anticipate was that the discussion of PARC versus MCAS has opened the door to a discussion of why are we testing, to a real backlash against assessment, against accountability for results, pieces that have been part of the Massachusetts landscape for well over a decade, that are now, there's a very, very well-mobilized initiative, largely by the Massachusetts Teachers Association, to say this is the wrong question. The question shouldn't be PARC versus MCAS. It should be, why are we testing? And that's...
Right, and that gives me a great opportunity to ask Michael Kirst, who was telling me last night that there's a relationship and a partnership and agreement with the California Teachers Union that in many ways has helped smooth the path in your state. And I think, again, and I'd like to go back to New Mexico as well, because there's a lot of opposition there. More and more people are hearing about the opt-out movement, which is taking on a life of its own beyond the Common Core, as you've noticed. Michael, California is such a large state, and yet in terms of controversy around the Common Core, you've been shockingly relatively quiet.
Yes, we have. And our goal, and I think our expectation, is to implement Common Core, the Smarter Balanced Assessment, Next Generation Science Standards. Through political stability, our leadership will be in place for 8 years. Through building a coalition that supports it, of the legislature, the governor, the state board, Our teachers' organizations have supported Common Core and Smarter Balanced. I think one thing that California did not do is get into policy overload, too many policies. We're not a race to the top state. We didn't win that. We're not a state waiver state. We just chose to delay teacher evaluation till new policies, until after the Common Core was more implemented and the Smarter Balance test had been given. So we're working on this. Our themes are patience, persistence, and humility. And we're going to stick with it over those times. Now, California...
Patience, persistence, and humility. So those are three words that the public and parents can really understand.
That's right.
Park, Smarter Balance, and some of the other acronyms around the Common Core are actually killing parents, as is the name, the Common Core. These are very hard things for people to grasp in terms of the understanding. I'm just curious, you mentioned three really good words. How does that work?
Well, first of all, we've worked with our public to lower expectations about how soon this will take place. I'm on record saying that at least half our teachers aren't ready to teach the Common Core, even though we're giving the assessment.
They need more training?
Yeah, they need more professional development, and so we're looking at that. We have mobilized higher education. The higher education institutions will accept the Smarter Balanced assessment for exempting out of remediation. The University of California, that approves high school courses, uses Common Core standards to do that. The SAT, which we're primarily an SAT state, is heavily aligned with Common Core. We speak about the assessment. So we talk a lot. The assessment is a performance exam, hour and a half, putting things together. It has extended response, not just a bubble-in test. It allows teachers to be scorers. That's a part of professional development. And it has short cycle assessments that allow teachers to reteach. And finally, Smarter Balanced has a digital library. So every teacher has a code in California that they can log in, see how the students are doing, and then they get a library of how they can reteach the problems that they're seeing. So we've reframed assessment as a tool as a system to improve instruction, and our main goal is all about changing, improving instruction in the classroom. So that has been a consistent message throughout. Now, it hasn't hurt that we have a rising tide of revenue. We'll be up $21 billion over our former high in 2007. Our low-income districts they'll see the expenditures increase 50% per pupil in 3 to 4 years. So, but we earmarked money for the Common Core, $1.2 billion. So I read about this in the paper, and it's all very interesting, but I don't feel a lot of what I read about, and so it's a unified coalition, stability, humility. You have a bunch of older men running the system. The governor's 76, I'm 76. Bill Honey runs our Sectional Equality Commission, he's 76. We know what we don't know. So we're proceeding that this is an unfolding experiment, and we're going to tack and move as we see it go.
So you have a bunch of older men running it in California, and things are going pretty well. But Hannah, as a young woman running things in New Mexico?
I will just do a little compare and contrast on multiple fronts. Liz, you started by talking about where New Mexico stands when it comes to student achievement. And so I actually would say many of our words are maybe on the exact opposite end of California. Persistence, we have that in common. But I would say urgent, impatient, and committed to creating a culture of excellence across our state.
That doesn't mean the teachers are happy with this.
It does not mean, change is hard. If this was easy, we can all sit around and say this nice cliche, but it's so true. If it was easy, it would have been done. But in this time span, and this is another thing, I'll do a little compare and contrast with California. We implemented, we probably were on the other end of the spectrum around implementation of many other things simultaneously. And I really give credit to our teachers and school leaders for their persistence in the midst of unbelievable amounts of change. We raised the expectations around graduation. We created a high-stakes graduation expectation. We changed our school accountability under No Child Left Behind. 2 years ago, 99% of our schools would have been failing, which became meaningless for creating real data to inform decision-making, instruction, support for teachers, support for students. We implemented a new teacher evaluation system. We adopted new standards, implemented a new assessment park. So a lot in a very short amount of time. It was a conscious decision. It was based on the fundamental belief that there are great things taking place in our state, but not enough for all our students. And so at the end of the day, we made a strong commitment. I credit Governor Susana Martinez for she set her face like a flint and said, this is our state. We can do great things by our students, and we are, but we can do even better. And we're going to partner across our state and really begin to make that commitment. So there's no way to isolate the impact of adopting new standards, new assessments, new high school expectations, new teacher evaluation, new school accountability, all within a 3-year span. That absolutely, there was a very great sense of urgency to create change. I have to say, recently, it was announced that New Mexico is third in the nation for improvements in graduation rate, so we're starting to see some of these things move. But it is not without the challenges of moving very quickly and consciously and very quickly along those lines. We are now, and I know as Sean was talking earlier, a really big push over the next few years is in partnership with our districts, not just around this assessment piece, but across the board around better communication. We too have hired a teacher liaison and are looking to hire a few others at the Public Education Department to create a loose network of teachers across our state so that there's better and open lines of communication that go back and forth as we move forward. So looking at very aggressive ways also to engage at the classroom level. What we have found and what has created a lot of the consternation is big gaps in misinformation. And so really wanting to open up all the way to the teacher. I always say this, who are you going to listen to and find your facts from? The State Department over there, that big thing up in Santa Fe, or your colleagues next door? And I would say your colleagues next door. And so how do we begin to really break down those barriers and equip our teachers with good information, and how do we open up those lines of communication? And we know that's a necessary piece if we want to see this through in a way that truly makes that difference long-term for our kids and for our teachers and our education system overall.
That's interesting, and we'll get back to that. But Mitchell, I want to get back to the standards for a minute, because they're lost oftentimes in the discussion about teacher evaluations and tests and protests and what people do and do not like. Talk a little bit about what the standards are in Massachusetts, what you have and what you're building on in terms of teaching and learning. Are they better? How are they helping our population become better educated as the original goals were intended for them to be?
Yeah, so standards don't do anything on their own. Tests don't do anything on their own. Tests don't teach kids. Standards don't teach kids. So it's how do you package them in a way that supports teachers to deliver a program of study that's commensurate with the aspirations and the standards. There's no question that our standards currently are an upgrade, are more aspirational in terms of student learning, student performance, and instruction than were our previous ones. So there's no question. So what we've tried to do is knit together those new academic expectations, learning expectations that are embodied in the standards with school improvement processes and teacher evaluation processes, so that we've encouraged our districts, and we're seeing this take root in very deliberate ways across the state, still uneven, but much further along than we were 3 or 4 years ago, where schools are being smart about looking at strengths and weaknesses of program, identifying 1 or 2 or 3 improvement goals, linking teacher evaluation processes, often with teams of teachers, around how do we upgrade the program of study in the area where we're struggling, how do we build on our strengths, and how do we move our program forward. That's very sophisticated work. It strikes me, thinking about Michael's comments, that each state is starting from a different place.
Absolutely.
And what it takes to take a poor performing system to adequate is different than what it takes to take an adequate system to good and what it takes to take a good system to great. I would argue that the work in Massachusetts is about good to great. We have lots of classrooms and schools where the education that students are getting is second to none, and I'm sure that's true in both of these states represented here. But in too many of our schools and classrooms, probably the majority, it's not world class. And so how do we elevate that program of instruction, the savvy of the instructional approaches, the quality of the curriculum, the kind of thinking and engagement that we want students to be experiencing, and how do we elevate them? It is that combination of initiatives around school improvement efforts tied to teacher evaluation work, linked back to the standards and the expectations for learning, and a very aggressive program for our lowest performing schools. We have been very aggressive in dealing with the lowest of our performing schools. You know, I don't claim to have a lock on truth and wisdom, and I try to say that I come to this with a great sense of humility, but I have a great sense of urgency, because I think this nation, and Massachusetts no less so, is in a place where we are slipping in terms of our status in the world, the quality of life, the quality of the future that we can provide for our young people if we're not smart about upgrading the education that they're receiving. It's not the only thing we need to work on, but it's a core building block.
Great, and I want to open this up to the audience, but I would like to ask each of you briefly, before I do so, to mention one lesson that from California, New Mexico, and Massachusetts that might benefit this crowd. Your states are all so different, but one lesson you have learned about Common Core and testing that might resonate nationally. Let's start with you, Michael.
Well, I think if you're trying to fundamentally change and improve instruction in classrooms where we have 11,120 schools, and that's your challenge, that I don't think can happen overnight. And then you have to have a consistent message from the state, align the state policies. That's we've done that around the new standards and the assessment. But then you have to have a very enthusiastic teaching force, and you have to provide them with the capacity to do it. And in my experience, what policymakers do is they raise the accountability bar a lot faster than they raise the capacity building bar. So they get out of whack. And so we're building them like this together. It'll take longer. Yeah, it'll take 8 years. But, you know, schools don't change that fast unless you're building capacity fast, and that's what we're trying to do.
And so you think that others could do that. It sounds like in a way you think that maybe tying the test scores and the evaluations to the test scores so quickly, like they're doing in New Mexico, may not be the best idea.
Right. I've never seen this test. I mean, we have no results. If I were to fashion a teacher evaluation policy, which we'll do, I want to see what it is. I mean, as I said, it's driven by, it's a radical change from bubble in 1 out of 5. And therefore, we need to build it around what we see. So this is a baseline year, and then we'll start from there with those policies.
So Hannah, should New Mexico be listening to California?
Each state's different.
Doesn't mean she gets to not answer.
That's true. I would say there's always lessons to learn from my colleagues, and I would say one of the things I couldn't agree with more is that it's important to bring the supports alongside. So often, and you reminded me of this, Mitchell, we get so stuck on what is the accountability we're implementing, whether it's teachers, school accountability, student accountability, whatever it may be, that we forget, why are we doing this in the first place? Why would we want to know? We want to know so we can do something about it. And I would say that's a big piece, is to ask that question and say, so what are you doing about it? And the one, just anecdotally, factually, I'll share, we have had a lot of, I call it robust feedback from the field. That's a very nice way of
Are
putting
you
it.
talking about protests and screaming parents?
I'm talking about a lot of feedback across the board. But I'll also tell you something else. Today, actually yesterday, I just got updated numbers. Last year, we had 8,000 teachers renewing or getting new licenses in the state of New Mexico. As of right now, and the window has not closed, we're at over 12,000. Renewing or new teachers entering the field. If I break that out, new teachers, for example, last year we had about 1,900 new teachers enter the field. This year we have over 3,100 to date. I mention this because simultaneously, what we've done is we've also provided supports for our teachers, recruitment and retention stipends, pay for performance pilots, more training than ever before, a fast track for getting your license, and actually, which in our state, as you go up our licensure tier, you increase your pay. So a lot of supports along the way. Doesn't mean it's been easy, doesn't mean we haven't had robust feedback, but at the end of the day, what I do know is, as I talk to teachers across our state, and this is akin to what Sean said earlier, our teachers do want rich information to inform how they support their students better. New Mexico has made that commitment, and I believe that we are beginning to see the results of that commitment, and we do not have time to waste.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, you know, moving large systems isn't easy, and we're each at different sizes. We're not California. We're not one of the smallest states. It's got about 1 million students, about 80,000 teachers, and that is bottom line. How do you influence 80,000 teachers to improve the quality of the program that they're providing to students? And that's not easy. I do think our teachers are up to it. If you look back on the Massachusetts story, back to the late 90s when the testing regime was first implemented at the high school level, only a quarter, maybe a third of students were meeting the proficiency bar. And there was a lot of pressure at that point in time to back off of this agenda. It was going to hurt kids and so forth. And what you've seen is just a steady improvement to today, where 80 to 90% of our students are hitting the proficiency bar the first time they take the test in 10th grade. And that, I mean, if you're cynical, you say, well, people figured out how to game the test. Not true, right? There may be some of that, but people got serious about providing students with stronger education, identifying the kids who are struggling. Our graduation rates are higher than ever. Our dropout rates are lower than ever during that same period that we've implemented the accountability regime. So part of the trick here, the lesson I'm trying to figure out how to solve is, how do we elevate the voices of our educators who are digging in to the new frameworks, that's most of them, and are getting their arms around the new assessment, that's about half of them, who are largely very positive about the assessments and the frameworks, the curriculum standards. The negative voices are largely people who have not looked at these. And so how do we elevate those voices of those who are paying attention, who actually have looked at this stuff, and make sure they're not drowned out by the naysayers?
Great. Well, on that note, I'd love to ask anyone in the audience to feel free to pose a question to any of the panelists. I believe there's someone walking around with a mic. I see someone right here in the front row. Does not have a mic yet, but Giselle, would you like to ask the first question since you're right up front? It's hard with me for the lights to see, so I'll just need a little help pointing out who's next after that.
Hi. I'd like to ask Mitchell a question that I didn't hear him answer, and that is, how are you dealing with the very organized opposition to anything that deals with Common Core in your state?
Yeah, so we've organized forums for getting input from the public on this decision around MCAS and PARC, and we've created a public space for those who are for it, against it, think it's a good thing, think it's a bad thing, or somewhere in the middle. And we are listening to those folks. And at the end of the day, this fall, our State Board of Education, which is the body that has the responsibility and the authority to make decisions on our standards and our testing program, will make a decision on the new assessments. The standards are a done deal. They're 5 years in.
I would just respond really quickly too an addition. One of the things we've just launched is a teacher listening tour, going community by community and meeting with teachers, listening and opening up the lines of communication, simultaneously actually also meeting in the same communities with community leaders. So at the time we're creating support for our educators so there's more understanding, answering a lot, invariably to date, every single one of these forums, and it's true of our community leaders as well as for our educators, the misinformation is overwhelming. And so the opportunity to have honest dialogue and feedback and kind of put on the record, if you will, wait a minute, actually, we're bridging into that policy. It's not next year 100% park on our teacher evaluation, it's 11%. So those kinds of conversations really make a difference, and we're seeing that we've just begun that, but we're seeing some great success.
We haven't had a lot of organized opposition at this point, but in terms of the state's overall population. But one of the strategies to head off all the bumps we're going to confront as we phase all this in is to mobilize higher education so that opponents will be seeing you're fighting this, then you're fighting what the higher education system wants, and you want your kids to go on to higher education and succeed. So we have all of 4 of our systems have endorsed Common Core and a smarter balance and its a related assessment. As I indicated, we have a lot of higher ed buy-in on course approval, taking the exam in terms of using it for exemption from remediation. And we meet with our segments, K-12 and higher ed, to coordinate strategy and coordinate professional for teacher training as well. So, and I think the SAT, I think we've yet to see that. That's a radically changed exam. I first took the SAT in 1957, and this looks nothing like any version we've seen. So we're going to be pushing all this together, and I think that's a very potent strategy. Higher education has a lot of credibility in California, more than, say, K-12, and so that's one of our keystones.
Great. Next question. Probably address it to just one of the.
Well,
this is another Massachusetts question. Big differences between PARCC and MCAS score or proficiency rates, and if so, how would that affect the decision of which one to go with?
I'm sorry, I don't think any of us could hear that question. We had two simultaneously.
Hey, okay. Do you expect big differences between PARCC and MCAS proficiency rates, and if so, how does that affect the decision, you think?
Did you hear the question?
I could not.
It sounded like you're asking about PARCC versus MCAS proficiency rates. So PARCC is just heading into standard setting. This is the first operational year. Again, Massachusetts, I think, was unique among the states giving PARCC in not being all in this year, in large part because we haven't taken the test yet, so this is our first year taking the test. I think that anybody who's concerned that PARCC will represent a lowering of standards compared to MCAS, based on the preliminary data that I've looked at, shouldn't be concerned.
Okay, question here.
Given that the standards are here to stay, I'd like to hear your comments about switching to a competency-based learning system, because that would eliminate a lot of the pushback that you're getting, where the assessments are ongoing every day. The child is personalized, learning and is following what the standards are and getting to them whenever, however, with whatever help that child needs at any given time. And there are some colleges in New England that are now insisting on competency-based transcripts. So I was wondering whether you think that might be a solution, and is it possible that we can implement it?
I'll just
Go ahead, Hannah.
Great question, Giselle. I will say I just had a conversation with the head of, we have a legislative education study committee who looks at different issues over the interim before our session, and we had a conversation around competency-based learning. I believe fundamentally it could be a game changer, particularly as we look at our high school students as a starting point and bridge out and think about what it does for our students and what it does for actually the testing conversation. When we think about, this is about, do you know your stuff? And if you do, we're not going to keep rehearsing something you already know. We want to engage our students and let them be the drivers of their education versus the flip side of that coin where we've got pretty rigid boundaries around grades, et cetera. Let's make this about expectations and what our students actually know and allow them to drive their success. I think it can be, it needs to be a part of our conversation as we move forward.
Yeah, you know, there's no question that personalization, technology is going to allow us to do more around personalization, individualization, competency-based, and we need to figure out how to be smart about that and take advantage of that and move kids along and provide them with the support they need. The thing we also have to be really smart about is that it's not a return to the past. Because in the past, we had a poor man's version of competency learning system, and under that system, kids from low-income backgrounds, kids from the other side of the tracks, moved a lot slower than kids from the suburbs and kids from this side of the tracks. And we don't want to return to those days of, in the name of they're not ready, some groups of kids don't get the good stuff, other kids get the good stuff, and the way in which you can distinguish is on income and race and ethnicity.
Yeah, I would add that, not a complete answer, but the new Smarter Balance test, it'd be interesting for people to look at what parents get in states like California. They get, you don't get fractions and you know how your kid did on fractions. It's more data analysis, ability to transfer from one context to another, communication, research skills for high school students. So the report comes back listing a broader base of skills which one could interpret as competency, and it's very different from the older reporting. So when you have more robust assessment, when you have performance exams, you have extended response, and you have computer adaptive, so each kid is taking his own test, which is a difference between Smarter Balanced and PARCC, then you can really provide parents with much deeper information. So, you know, these assessments and their designs matter, in my judgment, and be careful what you do.
Did we have a final question before wrapping up?
Over here, in the back.
In the back.
First, thank you very much for sharing your state's perspectives around this issue here. And my question, I apologize, is I would love to hear from all three of you. It's around, many states are exploring legislation or Board of Education policies around parents opting their children out of assessments. So how are your states handling this issue?
Yeah, I have no need to answer that. We have almost no opt-out. Two places, Palo Alto, where the average house value is over $2 million, and a place called Palos Verdes in LA with average house values of $1.75 million. It's among few wealthy enclaves. So
aren't they sending their kids to
I'll
private
pass
school?
this on. Pardon?
Their kids are in private school, right?
Yeah, no, well, these are the public schools in those places. That's it.
Yeah.
And Orange County, one high-end place.
Right, right. There was very little opt-out in Massachusetts this year, under 2%, which is roughly what we get in any given year with the MCAS exam. The Teachers Association in Massachusetts is interested in establishing a condoned opt-out through legislation. I'm not sure that that's going to get traction. You know, discretion would have me stop right now, but I've said tongue in cheek, where does it stop? You know, education, public education is a package. Can I opt out of the teacher I don't want? Can I opt out of taking math if I don't want to take math?
Well said. Very well said. We did have more opt-outs than we've had in our past, and we absolutely supported our districts in encouraging their parents and really having, and we had districts, some who were really aggressively pursued parents and had one-on-one conversations. In the places where that took place, the opt-out numbers were down, and there was a lot more open communication and understanding. And so I would say that we'll continue to work with our districts and support them in really good communication. I think I will tell you, so Park, for those of you who know, had 2 testing windows this last year. By the way, one of the great things is we were able to do a survey in New Mexico, and I think other states did as well in Park. We're now down to 1 testing window based on feedback from the field, and the test is 90 minutes shorter based on feedback from the field as well as we go into the next year. But one interesting piece that we saw is because there were 2 testing windows, many students who actually opted out in the first testing window opted in the second. Wasn't so bad. Gosh, my friends are still, walking around, living, coming back to school. And so I do fundamentally believe keeping those lines of communication open, but also time is our friend in this regard, because folks seeing other folks and seeing the results and the opportunity to actually use this information in a way that makes a difference for our kids, I think we're going to see less and less in our state.
In some ways, we're ending the conversation where we started, which is urging a lot of good communication around these issues. And I'm a New York City public school parent, and I can tell you the opt-out movement is huge, has been huge. And the anger and the vitriol and the protests and the consternation and the concern. There have been memos, there's been teachers who are upset and in some cases not sure what to tell parents. I mean, it's huge. And again, I will go back to the conversation I had on the plane. It's a lot of confusion. People are just going to react to hating the tests. So I think it's incumbent on you to explain why we need these new higher standards, what they are, and encourage people to read them.
Yes.
That never happens. Have you all read them? I hope you have. Some of you helped write them. But yeah, so anyway, I think the communication piece is extremely important in this issue. And I don't think the opt-out movement is going away anytime soon, nor is this discussion. It's going to be even more pronounced as we enter the presidential campaign and another election season. So it's been great to have everybody talk about it. And I'd like to give a great big hand for these panelists.